big news from your boss, from Rachel Reeves, the person who's most likely to be the new Chancellor after the election if Labour win it. She is saying Labour would legislate to guarantee that any future Chancellor making significant tax and spending changes would be subject to an independent forecast by the Office for Budgetary Responsibility. What is it about the completely disastrous budget of Kwasi Kwarteng, the worst Chancellor in British history, that has led you to this conclusion, James Murray?
Yeah, that's right, because, we all remember what happened a year ago when the Conservatives crashed the economy. They added billions of pounds to borrowing through unfunded tax cuts, and they undermined our economic institutions. They sidelined the OBR in that process. And what we're saying is that must never be allowed to happen again. Never again should a Prime Minister and Chancellor be able to play fast and loose with the public finances and cause so much damage to the economy and to household finances. So what we're saying is we would introduce a new fiscal lock, which would say that any major permanent tax and spend changes would be subject to that independent forecast by the Office of Responsibility. And crucially, that would bring stability and certainty back to the economy, back to public finances. And that stability is absolutely crucial to get the economy growing again and to make people across Britain better off.
Jeremy Hunt, the current Chancellor, says that tax cuts are virtually impossible in the current status of things. I mean, people feel very highly taxed, at the highest tax burden as a proportion of what the country makes, GDP, since the Second World War. What does Labour think about that?
Well, I think the reason we're in this position is because of 13 years of the Conservatives, 13 years of economic mismanagement and crashing the economy.
So would you cut taxes, James Murray?
It's true that the tax burden, is at its highest in 70 years, and we want to see lower taxes for working people. Well, we want to see working taxes for lower people, but what we're absolutely clear on is we cannot have unfunded tax cuts. Stability and certainty must come first, because we saw last year what happened when there were unfunded tax cuts, when the OBR was sidelined, and the economy was crashed by the Conservatives.
I mean, he says the tide is turning in the cost of living crisis. Is Labour as optimistic as Jeremy Hunt? Are you saying that, obviously inflation is still too high, 6.7%, no sort of massive bone of contention about that, but do you think the tide is turning in the economy? Do you think things will get better or are getting better?
Well, look, I don't think that most people across Britain feel like things are all fine now. People who are coming off their fixed-term mortgage deals are seeing their new mortgage deals going up by £220 a month. We know that inflation is still high. We know that prices are still going up. We know that people are still struggling. So, really, I don't think people will take much comfort from what the Chancellor says. And frankly, people want to see a long-term plan to make sure that we have growth in our economy, that we have jobs right across the country, and that people across this country can be better off.
James, the front page of the Daily Mail says Starmer lets cat out of the bag on Brexit betrayal. Labour's mask has apparently slipped last night after Keir Starmer was filmed saying he did not want to diverge from EU rules. Keir Starmer, your leader, is someone who has said that he wanted a second referendum previously. He now says he wants to make Brexit work. Where is he on this? Who do we believe?
Well, look, Keir Starmer and all of us are absolutely clear what our red lines are, which is that we don't want to be part of the single market, we don't want to be in a customs union, we don't want to bring back freedom of movement. But what we do want is a better trade and investment relationship with the EU. We need to have that better trade relationship so that we can grow our economy, because it's in our national economic interest.
So are you happy to diverge from EU rules, or are you not happy?
Well, look, I think the comments that Keir was making were about the fact that, we have no interest in watering down UK standards, when it comes to consumer protection or food standards or workers' rights. We want to protect and in some cases, strengthen the UK standards that we have. And that was the point that he was making. And those comments were clearly within the context of our red lines, as I said, around customs union, single market and freedom of movement.
So if you're strengthening food standards, for example, you actually perhaps would be diverging from EU standards. So you are happy to diverge from EU standards, James Murray?
Well, look, I think when you have countries who have high standards, it can actually bring down some of the barriers to trade. So, for instance, if you have a veterinary agreement between the UK and the EU, if you have two jurisdictions that both have high animal welfare standards, that can reduce barriers to trade.
Sorry, I get what you're saying.
Having those high standards.
I get what you're saying, James. I totally get that. But I think the question a lot of people asking this morning is, in terms of Keir Starmer and Brexit? Are you or are you not happy to diverge from EU standards?
Well, look, obviously, we are outside of the single market, outside the customs union. We are pushing the government to sign trade deals with other countries, which is different from when we were a member of the European Union. But what the comments that you're referring to are about UK standards, and we have no interest in watering them down.
But he also said he didn't want to diverge from EU standards. I'm sorry, James Murray, I'm just trying to get an answer out of you. Yes or no, are you happy to diverge from EU standards?
Well, look, obviously, we're outside the European Union, we're outside the single market, outside the customs union.
Jim, sorry, can you just give me a yes or no?
But the comments that Keir Starmer made were very clearly about the UK standards and what our approach to them is, and we're not in the business of wanting to water down those standards.
OK, I just don't feel I'm getting an answer on that, James, but thank you anyway. In terms of HS2 on the Manchester leg, could we be in trouble? Hunt says the costs are out of control. Would Labour commit to HS2 on the leg to Manchester? Well, look, you're right that Jeremy Hunt has said that costs are totally out of control, and frankly that is down to 13 years of utter mismanagement by the Conservatives. Now, we want to see HS2 built, but clearly, the government blows a hole in this project, then we would have to examine what we would inherit if we won the next election and consider our approach in that light. How confident are you you'll win the next election? The polls are really far ahead. We've got Rishi Sunak changing his mind on net zero. Tell us what you think about net zero and how confident you are Labour will win the next election. Well, look, we see polls every day, and frankly, all that matters is what happens when the general election is called. We need to know that we cannot rest on our laurels for a second. We need to keep doing everything we can to earn the trust of the British people, that we will manage the economy well, that we will be trustworthy with the public finances, and that we will get the economy growing to make people across Britain better off. So the election is still a way off. We still need to do a huge amount of work to make sure that we're in a position to put forward the best possible offer and the best possible promise of trust to the British people. And in terms of net zero, what do you make of Rishi Sunak's plans? Because you have said, Labour have said that they will keep the 2030 target. I mean, why not give people a bit more breathing room in terms of new petrol and diesel cars? Well, look, I think the thing about that 2030 date for petrol and diesel cars, for new petrol and diesel cars being phased out, is that would actually bring down costs, because by 2030, electric vehicles are forecast to be cheaper, and then they're cheaper to run over their lifetime. So actually what the government's done is increasing costs for people, but crucially, as well as that, it's creating huge uncertainty for businesses. So businesses, above all else, crave certainty, stability and commitment to a plan when they're considering how to invest and where to invest. Now, what the government has done goes dead against that. It means that businesses are going to be thinking about their investment decisions. It damages growth, damages prospect for job creation, and crucially, will leave people across Britain worse off. James, thank you very much indeed. That's James Murray there, who's Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury.